Okay, there we go. Took a second to get us working, but now we are started. Let's go ahead and close some of this stuff out. And okay. Let somebody know. Okay, okay. We're good there. All right. So I'm going to go and stream about something that we kind of touched on a little bit previously. It's Targeted Individual Day. And I found some other things that were kind of interesting that might kind of tie into it, but we'll see how that works. Right now, I've got quite a few. I mean, this thing goes pretty deep, so we'll see how far I get with this. Let's see. There is quite a bit of content when it comes to targeted individuals. Now, this one, at first I found just a bunch of nobodies. Like black guy that is woke to the spiritual fight and all that. Older, middle-aged mom that is fighting against the dentistry. But then I found somebody that looked like they have some interesting credentials, and then what looks like to be people testifying about what she calls remote neural monitoring. And it's kind of interesting because when I made that video the other day, maybe a month and a half ago, I was talking about how, they were going to put, Neuralink in your brain and people were going to become zombies. And I was just kind of shooting the shit. But this is kind of interesting because this was way before Neuralink. This video is 9 years old. And I started thinking about how I'm trying to keep an open mind. I started thinking about how this could actually work, how it would work in practice if it was real, and trying to kind of weave my way in between people that are just gonzo and bonkers to people that might have actual interesting things to say that are backed up by a science. So what we got here is let's close that out. This woman right here is Dr. Catherine Horton. Let me go to her page and I'll show you what she's got going on. So she's supposedly a ex-research fellow at St. John's College, Oxford. She's been under overt surveillance by British intelligence since November 2011, ever since she attended a public high court hearing as a member of the public. Now, why that's interesting is, let's see, this right here is a video in 2012 called the Indigo Ribbon Campaign Activism Series, and Targeted Individuals Address U.S. Bioethics Committee. So these people are actually standing, I believe, in front of an actual government hearing about this. I didn't watch any of the video, but it just seemed like it's pretty interesting, and it wouldn't just be some schizo talking shit. So, Demonstrative stalking followed her abroad and exploded into nonstop harassment, medical sabotage, and eventually brutal attacks with microwave weapons after she threatened to report the second break-in into her home to the police. She sought an emergency injunction against British intelligence from the High Court in London, was brutally attacked straight after the hearing in her London hotel room, received death threats, and survived an assassination attempt. The attacks continue and are becoming even more brutal and psychopathic. She is desperately fighting for her life and is asking for your support. Follow her and stop 007.org. So let's watch what she has to say about this.
Hello, I'm Dr. Catherine Horton. I would like to explain in this video remote neural monitoring. And I'll just give the very, very basics so that when people approach you and they say, I'm a victim of remote neural monitoring, you don't just write them off as crazy or something like that. And to understand what they're saying, you have to know a bit about very, very modern technology that's currently being literally trialed on people. So the person who approaches you and might say, I'm a victim of remote neural monitoring, just like the victim who might approach you and say, I'm a victim of organized stalking, or I'm a victim of microwave weapons, you know, you have to know what to look for. You have to know what the current status is of science and of weapons technology to be able to assess what they're saying and put it into context. Because if you do not understand the context, these people might be saying something that actually exists and you just write them off as crazy, which will mean that you're not actually there for another human being who's approaching you, begging you for help.
So one of the things that is kind of interesting to me is, so obviously there are microwave weapons, and people have been affected by these in like riots and demonstrations against the government. Whether that's true about the thing that they were experiencing in Cuba, as far as I forgot what they called the Havana syndrome, I believe it was, where they're saying that they were victims of being zapped with a concentrated microwave. And what was interesting is some of these people believe that their brains are being read, or that they're having messages put in their head. Now, the reason I find it difficult is because in order to specifically activate certain parts of people's brains, you'd have to have a very, 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 like, very specific current activated onto someone's neurons to activate that specific little targeted area. And then to do that, it would have to be not interrupted by everything that we have going on around us right now. So, for instance, let me give you an example of how that works with Wi-Fi. So you've got 5G, and then you've got originally what people would use is 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and then it moved to 5G. So the thing originally with 5G is it was used for, this is when I used to do like home automation and a lot of that kind of stuff, where I had to go and help implement basically technology into people's houses or businesses and get it all kind of wrapped up into a nice little package that they can control from an iPad or some tablet, or remotely integrate things. I mean, I was integrating things all the way from someone's stupid Roku to freezers that were to go and keep and store stem cells for laboratories. So I have a good experience of integrating different technologies into things. And so going back to the Wi-Fi, the original Wi-Fi that the low band, I guess is what they would call it, or the 2.4, is it's better for operating at longer distances because it can go and pass through walls easier because it's a shorter band. The problem with 5G, and I guess they've solved that because I don't really keep up with the technology, is that it was a lot more difficult to get it to go short range. I mean, long range. It was good for short range. So you'd have to be in close proximity to a access point, or basically you'd have to have more access points all over the place. And it was a little bit more of a pain in the ass because then you have to go and sync all these access points and repeaters through whatever network that you're trying to go and do this. And so I hope you guys aren't hearing the baby make awful sounds. But so what I'm getting at with that, with the signals going into people's brains, is in order to pass through someone's skull and then actually like get this to work, you would have to be really, really precise in targeting it. And because you're basically like, you're just shooting like a fire hose at somebody. If you're trying to like activate a specific neuron, you're better off getting some kind of chemical that would actually be ingested into somebody and then activate things. But then it's a little bit more tricky to actually get that to activate like specific things. That's so why, like, when you go and see these people that have they control something with their mind, like those experiments when they got all the little stuff on their head, the way that works is it's, right there, and it's working off of current. So if you were watching the stream the other day when I was explaining how electricity works and Ohm's law, the best way for me to explain electricity and how current and all that works is pretend that you have a hose, and you've got the length of the hose, you've got the flow, and that's your voltage. Then you've got current, which is like your amperage, and that's basically how high it goes outside. So that's when they're talking about when like magnetic fields, when you've got like a wire, there's actually electricity going outside, kind of in the way that it kind of like it evens out through Ohm's law, which is V equals IR, voltage equals current times resistance. And so you can go and just basically, if you want to find out resistance, then you go and divide voltage by current. So you would be having V divided by R equals R, and so on and so on. So when you go and talk about having basically sending a signal into someone's brain, you're sending out like current. That's why like you have electric fields and all that stuff that interrupts. Like if you've had Wi-Fi on your phone and you're standing next to a microwave, sometimes it'll cause it to shut out because you're getting disrupted. Same thing with why like your coax cable for TVs was so insulated, because you had this big thick cable and outside interference. And then just like we were talking about with the nanotechnology, the reason that like really like tiny nanobots and nanotechnology doesn't work well is because of interference. Because when you start working at operating something so low, any kind of like photon or some kind of something in the atomic level can easily just kind of knock that out. That's why they do these big experiments with like stuff deep underground, and they have to layer the whole area with like special metals and linings to go and reduce the interference so they can actually like intercept like whatever particle, like a neutrino. Like they kept doing all those neutrino experiments up in the mountains. They had a big giant water reservoir lined with gold, and then they could detect a neutrino. So I hope that kind of breaks down everything. Um, I think I kind of hope I explained it, but so that's why for me it's hard for me to believe this stuff when people are saying that they're actually experiencing being targeted through kind of like signals and stuff. I'm open minded to it. You can obviously spray people with microwaves, but getting them to um, now, I will say with that, it may be difficult to get them to do something specific, but when you are hitting somebody with that, I mean, you're firing all, it's like you're getting a misfire on an engine. So, like, you have all these different cylinders activating, and you can get someone to act wacky there. But actually controlling what they do, for me, is kind of difficult. And so, actually, after this, I found, oddly enough, a guy going through the Fukushima disaster, and surprisingly only has 55 views after 13 years, because he has a really good breakdown of how this thermal nuclear reactor works. So now that I've gone and blabbed a bunch about that, let me go and continue the video.
You know, so that's why you have to understand these things. It is, I think, your civic duty to do so, even if it's scary, even if it sounds out there. So I will do my best to explain this technology, but you have to know that this technology is more or less classified. So what we do know about this technology are patents from the 1970s, and there are some patents that are stem from the 1990s, which have expired. And whistleblowers have come forward and they've actually said this technology is now being used on people in an illegal fashion. So crimes like that are being committed with a known technology, and the actual effects might be scary. So I'm not going to swamp you with the patents. You can find them yourself. I might put a link down there, but what I want to say, roughly describe how this technology works, and I will be very hand wavy, so all the real key experts, don't just stomp on my head if I'm imprecise, because what I would like to do is explain this to people who maybe do not know anything about physics, okay, or nothing about technology. So essentially there's this new thing, this new capability that we have, which is called remote neural monitoring. And what it essentially is reading out your brain functions remotely. And you can, as you can imagine, if you could read out a human being's brain remotely, you can probably also perhaps influence it remotely, and that's exactly the problem. So when victims come forward and they say, I'm a victim, they might be the victim of a horrific crime. That's essentially absolutely a world premiere, essentially. This sort of crime has never been there before, has never been seen before, and that's why law enforcement, lawyers, judges, and doctors might have never heard about it, because it's actually using very modern technology. What it is at its core is essentially the following thing. When you are, for example, moving your arms about, or when you're thinking about a certain topic, when you're processing information, like whatever goes through your eyes, or your ears, and you're hearing sound, or you're seeing colors, or you're seeing images, and then you're reacting to them, or you're doing sport and you're moving your limbs to play volleyball or whatever, play football. This is all done with electrical signals inside your head, and every electrical signal is like a small current running along on the wiring in your head, if you like, and along your spine, and these.
Okay, so that's exactly what I was just saying about how current and electricity works. Now, I would be interested to find out if she actually goes on to describe how you can go and actually, if you're just tuning in, I just went on a little long spiel about how all of this would work in my mind that I would like try to explain. What she's saying is kind of along the lines of what I was saying, where you'd have to go and target individual things. And she was saying that when your brain activates these things, like different parts of your body, then it will send out a wave, which is kind of like when I was displaying the VPN video about how you could track somebody that's using Wi-Fi because of the different heat signatures of the intensity of the signal. If you really went to, no problem, man. That's more. Your own personal life is more important. So you could actually, if you had some kind of way to really refine the signal that was coming off of somebody, you could actually capture the packets and really understand what was coming off of there. But as I was saying, it's very hard to do that because you have such fine waves that would be interacting and being damaged by outside radiation. So let's continue what she's saying.
Signals are sent into your arms and your limbs, and your brain is wired up so everything can be steered. When I'm moving my fingers, it's essentially all steered through my head, through my spine, through this neural system. Okay, but what you essentially have is electrical signals traveling. But every single electrical signal is a little electric current, a little pulse traveling along, a conductor, if you like.
So that's that's what I was just explaining with packets. That's like when you send packets of Wi-Fi or packets over your internet cables, they come out like there's little it's like in a series, and you have same thing with like any kind of network. There's like a key that unlocks like the next door, and then it gets to the next door, it opens that up, and it sends it, and it tells what to do.
Now, every single time current runs along a conductor, it generates an electromagnetic field, always. It is impossible to send current without the moving current generating an electromagnetic field. And this is, kind of radiated off, and it's broadcast off. So if you manage to read out that field, then you can reconstruct the strength of the current and in what direction it's flowing. Do you see?
So again, I'm trying to keep an open mind, but the problem is the only way that you can get this to work is two ways. You can send some actual chemical that goes and unlocks each certain door, which would be very difficult to target. You'd have to know exactly what neuron to fire and in that area. And then the other thing that you see with these experiments where they attach electrodes to people's heads, and they can kind of get you, or you can kind of activate certain little like robots and stuff. The problem, like I said, is interference, because that's such a tiny little signal. And if you're going back to, like, as I said, the Havana syndrome, where you're blasting people with microwaves, then you're just kind of spraying somebody with a fire hose of a magnetic field. It's not really like direct and controlling one certain thing. You can get somebody kind of glitch out because you're kind of frying their brain. Like I said, with you got a phone next to a microwave, it's not gonna send your dick pics to somebody. It's not gonna be that specific, but it'll get your phone to act wacky.
Now, what you can do, if you just had a wire with current on, you could measure the field, and you could tell that there's a current running along. And you could also tell, is it going from is plus and minus here, or is it the other way around? So you can read this out. And what you have...
No, Slav, I don't know what voice to skull is yet. Brief us in the chat, because I'm not familiar with what that is.
What you have to do for that, to read it out remotely, is to have sensors around that. Okay. So when you go and you have an EEG, what you're essentially reading out is the signal, this electromagnetic field that the current generates. So you can read out pulses, and that's why you can have little sensors on your heart or sensors on your skull, and they can read out essentially this electromagnetic field. But now, if you've got very, very fine sensors, then you can have better and better resolution about the actual inside of what the exact electrical signals are and what the how the current is running.
This actually, I'm glad I found this lady, because she's actually, not to toot my own horn, but this is exactly what I said. This is the way that you would have to do it. And she is supposedly, according to her credentials, as she says here, a former research fellow at St. John's College of Oxford. And I do try to keep an open mind about this. So as much as some of it is haha, I do want to know kind of more about this.
So what you need is very, very fine sensors if you want to have higher resolution. And what you probably don't know is that we have made in science huge leaps in how well we can read out very, very fine changes in electromagnetic fields. So the biggest advances I don't even know about as a particle physicist, but I have seen some, and they're already impressive. So essentially now we have amazing capabilities to read out small changes in field. That's one ingredient you need, and with this very fine sensors, you can essentially place sensors around electrical activity and read it out from the fields. But then, of course, if you're something like the human brain, there's so many electrical pulses running, so the actual pattern that it will generate will be very, very complex, and you'd have to read it out in great detail. Now, what we also have is an incredible increase in computing power. And this computing processing power allows us to actually read out these electrical field signals and have a computer analyze it very, very rapidly. And then any sort of electromagnetic signal, just like, when you have, for example, voice signals. So voice is just sound. It's not electromagnetic. It's just, vibrations in air. Already you have this sort of software, which if you hear a person speak, all these little bars appearing and are showing you what sort of frequencies are in their voice. So my voice has got...
This actually is one thing that's pretty interesting also is... years ago, I saw this video of basically Mossad's technology of being able to basically send IR waves through pictures, read pictures, and you can actually hear what people are saying through a video. It's like it's a little paranoid, but I have a printer behind me, and so actually there's little IR signals on some of these printers that they were able to actually hack into people's network systems by sending in an IR light through the printer over like a mile away. And so what she's talking about, I covered in my VPNs are useless technology. Right. God damn it. So this right here, I've got it muted, but this is kind of displaying what she's talking about, where you have signals coming off of this guy's phone. He was able to create a little technology. Let's see if he, where was that? If he shows the actual device. Okay, so this was this thing that this guy made with just some chips you can buy offline, and then he synchronized them to basically make a virtual image on here. So if you were actually able to really define the packets of information that are okay, you're having a hard time hearing me. Is anyone else having a hard time hearing me? Because I can turn it up or speak louder. I just turned up my microphone, so I hope you guys can hear me now. Anyone else having issues? Okay. So, as I was saying, this guy made what she's talking about right now is essentially what this guy was able to go and pick up. Okay. So I'll turn up the voice on there. I've kind of basically gone over what I was saying. If you guys have any interest in kind of knowing more about these VPNs and wireless technology and how like all the information that's displayed off of basically radiating off of Wi-Fi. You can find that. Let's go back to her. I'll turn up the volume a little bit more.
A fairly narrow band, for example, but male voices, and depending on how many harmonics you have in your voice, you might have a very broad spectrum. So you can already tell people apart based on their voice print. And what you would do is just you hear the voice and you recognize the person, but the computer would essentially take in the sound signal and then decompose it into all the different frequencies that are there. So when I speak, I've got certain tones that are very high, certain are very deep, and when I speak it's just an up and down with lots and lots of frequencies. And then because I'm not, for example, like a flute or an organ pipe, which just gives you one frequency, just one tone, when I'm speaking there are lots and lots of tones intermixed,
Okay.
which are then intermingled.
I'll look up the voice to skull thing while she's talking.
To create human speech. So what a computer can do is decompose.
What did I do? What is playing? Oh, I'm sorry.
Your voice into all the different tones, if you like, all the different pitches, and the pitch is a frequency, is a certain frequency in the sound. And then what you'll see in this kind of voice analysis software is all these like different bars, which will show you there's lots of deep frequencies and lots of high frequencies, and you will have this kind of like, you know what I mean, these kind of visualizations whereby the voice is decomposed and you've got these different lines just running up and down, up and down. And what this is essentially a Fourier transform. The mathematical construct is a Fourier transform of this. It will decompose what you hear into the different frequencies. So, and that's just for a sound wave, and you can do the same thing for an electromagnetic wave. You can then, instead of just sound, you are detecting the electromagnetic wave. Like light is, for example, an electromagnetic wave, and light you can also decompose into different colors, and different colors are different frequencies. And we can do the same thing for electromagnetic waves that are outside the visible spectrum. So we only see a very narrow range, as much as we only hear a very narrow range.
So
bats have very high pitch, which you cannot hear anymore. So they use this kind of echo sound to navigate, so they can see with their ears, which is why they've got bigger ears than they have eyes, because they use sound to see. So you can use light to see or sound to see, and just like that, light is made up of different frequencies, just like sound is made up of different frequencies, and light that we cannot see is also made up of different frequencies. And light is just an electromagnetic wave. So any sort of electromagnetic wave you can analyze, you can decompose. If several frequencies are overlaid, you can decompose them using a Fourier transform, and you can then mathematically say this wave, if it's a sound wave, a visible light wave, or an invisible light wave, is made up of all these frequencies. And if I overlay these frequencies, you will get back exactly the sound wave. So a computer can listen to your voice, it can take all the different frequencies, pass it to another computer that has never heard you speak, and if that computer takes the different frequencies and puts them together again, it can generate your voice. And that's exactly what happens when you're talking over the telephone, because your sound waves are going into the device, they are decomposed, they are sent across the system, and then on the other end, that is generated back, these frequency components, into a sound wave again, and then your best friend hears your voice on the phone. So this is nothing fancy, okay? We've done it now for absolutely decades. And the only thing that's new for you, you take your telephone for granted, but remember, you're not speaking down a pipe anymore. It's turned into electromagnetic signals, and they are passed on and so on. And that's because they got, decomposed, and it's this print that we're sending, and it's, generated back into a sound wave. Now, what I'm saying is that you can do the same thing with all electromagnetic signals. So you can do the same thing with visible light, with invisible light, with radio frequencies, with microwave frequencies, with everything, all electromagnetic waves. And I've told you in the beginning that any current that's, flowing along a cable or a little, conducting path will generate
Okay, let me go and turn my settings up a little bit for her then.
an electromagnetic field, an electromagnetic wave. So, with fine enough sensors and enough computing power, you can take any sort of electromagnetic wave and decompose it using a Fourier transform into its frequency pattern. It's kind of like a fingerprint. What sort of frequencies is it made up of? And then you can take the same frequencies, and another computer can put them together and generate an electromagnetic wave. Do you understand? So I'm now taking what you know about your telephone and we're applying it to, light waves. So for example, your TV or your computer screen, right, also takes different light components and generates the image of me, right? So my image is going into the camera there, okay, it's decomposed, sent over the network, and then your screen generates my image for you. Okay, so that you understand. You've now understood it for sound wave, you understand it for visible light, and now imagine the electromagnetic waves that your brain is emitting are invisible. But it doesn't mean that they don't exist, because you can put sensors, little sensors on your skull, and then you can read it out. And now what I'm telling you is that these little sensors that read out your brain activity do not have to be on your skull. They can also be away. And if the sensors are fine enough, they will pick up the activity inside your brain just the same. And then the better your processing power and the finer your sensors, the further away they can be from your head. Do you see? So with fancier and fancier technology, you can, at some point you can just have like a helmet that doesn't even touch you and read out your signals, But then there are also other ways where you can stimulate the brain. For example, you can irradiate someone's head or irradiate a muscle, a certain muscle, then see what activity it generates inside the head. So, if you shine something onto my muscle, an electromagnetic pulse that then makes my muscles contract, because, when I'm contracting these muscles, I'm also sending electrical signals, an electromagnetic pulse along. So you can also do the same thing externally and then make muscles contract, I mean, you maybe have done this in biology, you have maybe a frog or something that's already dead, unfortunately, but then you take a, what's it called, like a conductor, and you just hold it there and you electroshock the frog and you can just make the legs contract, because you're sending electromagnetic pulse along the arm. So basically there are many different ways to read out the activity inside the brain, and you can think about fancy experiments, how you could, maybe trigger a muscle and then read out how the brain activity changes, or you can do the same thing in reverse. You've read out the brain activity and you're just now irradiating the head, and you're forcing, because the electromagnetic field is now forcing a current inside your head to flow, and then you can trigger, the nerves. And what you can do in detail depends on how sophisticated your equipment is, but in principle, all of this is possible. So if someone approaches you and says, you know what, my limbs are being moved remotely, it could be two things. It could be someone just sent an electromagnetic pulse and shot it into their muscles, and then their muscles.
So this is what's very concerning to me, is the progression of having Starlink all over the planet now. You can see little models that they've made, like a little GIF of basically all the different satellites that are orbiting around the planet. And what's interesting is if they could concentrate those kind of signals, and they were actually able to get that signal, that very sensitive signal, through walls, then it would be quite easy if you had a brain mapping of everybody to actually target them individually and get them to do things, which is, I'm a little skeptical of it, but it is an interesting route to think about. I would not put it past um, bad individuals with lots of power to go and try to do something like that.
And their nerves reacting to this electromagnetic pulse, and they're suddenly reading out. It's the same as if the brain had sent the signal, but instead the signal is external. So you can make literally people's muscles jerk by just sending electromagnetic pulses of the right frequency, shoot them into their arms so that it triggers their nerves, and that can be done. So when people say, oh, my limbs are being moved, do not assume, oh, they're crazy, or there's this new disease that now everybody thinks that their limbs are being moved remotely. No, just think, hang on, we are now in an era where it's all electromagnetic signals, electromagnetic pulses everywhere, you know, Wi-Fi and mobile phones, and it's all electromagnetic signals. So perhaps what this person is talking about is that they're being, you know, maybe harassed or bothered by someone following them around and shooting an electromagnetic pulse into their arm for harassment and moving their arm, because that is possible. So this would be remote, you know, muscle control, essentially, muscle pulsing as I call it. That is entirely possible. And then there's much more insidious ways. And, you know, as you can imagine, the military and the intelligence agencies have got access to the cutting edge stuff. So, you know, they will have access to this thing where you don't even have to have sensors on someone's brain to read out their brain print. And with brain print, I mean this very individual signature that your brain will generate, because the way the connections are running inside your head, that is grown organically, so it will be unique to you, you know, and you will have made connection.
So that's why I was saying that fits into what I just said about them having to have basically an individualized brain map of you, which if you remember in Batman, when they made a map of everything that was going on in the city using people's cell phones, you know, it's not too far-fetched. You don't know what all the different background processes are of, and I'm guilty of sleeping with the phone by my head. I really need to break that habit of listening to things while I go to sleep, especially when they've started saying, even Apple started recommending that you don't sleep with a phone plugged in, charging, you know, like 2 feet from your head, because as you can see from that thing I showed you with this, you can see how far that Wi-Fi signal is radiating past that phone. Look at all of that. Look how far that is. That's one guy right there. And look how far that spectrum is shooting out from him that can be read off. Now, the other thing too is the way that he mapped this out has the different intensities. So then you can actually, if you really got creative, you could start saying everything is zeros and ones. So if you start thinking about everything as zeros and ones, you can really refine it into how many zeros are right here behind it, 10010, you know, and then actually make an actual idea, a map of what the signal is coming off of somebody. So if you think about looking at someone's brain, if you're able to scan somebody's brain, then that would actually make sense as to what she's saying. So again, this is why I'm interested in what she's saying. And then after that, we'll go into this bioethics committee address. But why I think what's crazy is a lot of people don't have the actual scientific background like I do or she does to really understand what's going on there. And a lot of these people are just feeling like they're going insane. They're being gaslighted. So more and more I listen to this lady, she's actually throwing some concrete ideas that are very interesting.
And you would have learned as a baby to move your limbs. You know how when a baby is born, at first they're really they're kind of cute and funny because they are, you know, want to touch their face and they, you know, hit themselves in the face and stuff like that. Well, that is the brain learning how to actually handle the, different limbs and the fingers. Because, when a baby is growing as a fetus, eventually this kind of like the brain starts firing signals, and the baby starts kicking, and actually a baby kicking inside a mother, as unpleasant as that might be, is actually a good sign, because it means its brain is now firing up. It's starting already to learn how to move around, because once a baby is born, it has to have already these capabilities. So it's already learning how to, basic stuff of how to push its legs, and stuff like that. So it will have some sort of movement, but it will be very restricted. And then when a baby is born, the neural circuitry is building up, and it will bit by bit learn how to move its fingers. And then as it gets older, after a couple of years, you can teach it how to play the piano or how to play a flute.
I gave this guy shit. There's a lady, Allison something. I used to be subscribed to her on YouTube, and she had a guy on there that was basically an electrical engineer, I think he was, and he was talking about all this stuff. And when he was saying, you can't actually to create a full Faraday cage of your house is very difficult. It's not going to actually work properly. Like, to actually get a proper Faraday cage, you actually have to have like every single angle and made into a box. You can't just have open sections. So if you're wearing, like, let's say what I'm envisioning is like a chainmail suit, you have open sections right there that are wider than the all little smaller rings. So I don't know how that would actually exactly work.
Flute, and bit by bit it will learn how to move its tongue for speech, how to move its fingers, and so on. But the way this little thing is just wiring up its brain will be very, very individual. So every single one of us, depending on in what order we learn certain things, did you learn how to play the violin? Did you learn how to play the piano? Or, your very, very specific childhood experiences and in your personal path will determine how the wiring happens. There are similarities between people, and that's why medical books can say, okay, this area is in charge of speech, and that area is in charge of moving maybe this side of your limbs and that side of your limbs, and so on. So there are similarities, roughly speaking, but then also finer details will be very individual. So now we have the situation that if someone can read out your very specific brain circuitry from the electromagnetic waves that your head radiates off, and if he or she then radiates it back, as much.
Well, Jared, even if you don't have Wi-Fi at your house, it doesn't matter, because the problem is you have a cell phone. And so, as I described in that your VPN is useless video, the people traveling by you are unwittingly mapping out every single Wi-Fi. I forgot what they called. Was it BSSID? Basically, everything that's out there, and creating a map of all the different modems that are around there.
Much as the current moving will generate a field, similarly, a field impinging on a conductor will generate a current. So, the two things are connected, and one will have the other as the result, and similarly, the other will have the former as the result. So, when someone has read out your personal brain print and will shine it on your head, essentially force the current inside your head to flow a certain way, he can, or she can, in principle, control your limbs in a way that is very unique to you, or control your thoughts or your emotions. And it sounds sci-fi, but then again, so many other things sounded sci-fi before. The car sounded sci-fi in the days when we only had horse carriages. The computer sounded sci-fi in the days when we only had typewriters, And mobile phones sounded just so sci-fi just a couple of years before, when mobile phones were either this big or, we only had wired telephones, and, people would have thought, what, you're telling me that one day there will be like, yeah, a satellite system, an entire freaking satellite system there just for you, just so that you can send each other, WhatsApp messages.
Imagine, because this is a 9-year-old video. This is way before it became public that they sent up all of these Starlink satellites. So imagine, she's kind of telling the truth right now, that we've got basically what looks like electrons going around the center of the core of an atom, with satellites constantly mapping out everything and monitoring everything.
It's over like a little device, yeah, right, But then again, here it is, So sounded sci-fi before, but now it's not. And similarly, this is now, if people are being attacked or tested upon with military technology, then of course it will be classified. Of course it will be ahead of what you know. That's just what you expect, right? I mean, the military is not going to test equipment from the 1970s, right? Because they know how that works. Okay, so they're not going to bother with that. If they test anything on people, it will be new stuff, so stuff you haven't heard about. So I'm telling you that now the scientific development is such that, we can read out the electrical signals from the brain, and we can force the current inside the brain to flow a certain way based on these signals by just sending the signals back. And this means, because depending on what you want to do, it could be very similar between people. So if you just want to make their limbs or one side of their body jerk around, then it's very easy, because you radiate the other side of their skull. So, this brain hemisphere is in charge of that side of your body, and this brain hemisphere is in charge of this side of your body. So, if you just want to say left or right, then this will be very common to all human beings. And if you just irradiate, the left-hand side of any human being, you will be moving the right, okay? But then there are other things like thoughts and feelings, which might again have similarities between human beings, but might also be quite specific. So, you see that the more detailed you would like to get, the more you need very, very detailed, very sensitive sensors to read out the brain print, and very, very good computers and very high processing power to then, kind of demodulate the signal that you're getting and make sense of it, because so many things will be overlaid. But now the processing power seems to be there, that if you read out one signal, once over 5 minutes, and you say you've got a week to just send it to an entire server farm, then you might be able to deconstruct it, so after a week you can send the signal back and suddenly steer a human being. Do you see? So it's all dependent on the sensitivity of our electromagnetic field sensors and our processing power. And both of these capabilities have just exploded exponentially. I mean, processing power for sure, but also the sensitivity, So then, if people say, my limbs are being controlled, it could be because they are being pulsed externally, and pulse is being shot through their window or maybe even their wall, that then suddenly jerks their limbs or makes their muscles cramp, and then you have to think, okay, this person, if it's not a neurological disease, then this person most likely is probably being tested upon, or fired at with this technology. And when they say, oh, I've got the feeling that, my thoughts are being read out, or my speech, there's something called subvocal speech, and some of it is just generated in your head, but sometimes, for example, when you're typing your password, you kind of say, let's say your password is banana. Don't pick banana, because, everybody picks banana, so pick a safe password. But let's say it's banana. And then, when you actually, before you type it and you think, what's my password? You would internally already think, oh, banana. And then when you're typing it out, you might almost like move your lips. And if you're not moving your lips, you might, without noticing, actually pass air through your vocal cords without making an audible sound. But you would say, banana, inside. And your tongue might move and your vocal cords might.
One of these interesting things that I've noticed, being married and basically being around the same person all the time, is that a lot of times I'll be thinking the exact same words and things as my wife, and I'll say something or she'll say something, And it's like, holy shit, I was literally about to say the exact same thing. And I kind of started believing more and more about telepathy and uh, basically how I truly am starting to believe that people um, do send out invisible patterns of like communication to people around you in your direct circle. One of the things though also is I'm starting to think about people, you know, when you're thinking about them or they're like you're on their mind and it could be miles and miles away. I'm starting to think that that's a possibility that people are actually communicating subconsciously.
Might actually resonate just like as if you'd said it out loud, but just much weaker, so you don't make an audible sound. I mean, if, say, you could irradiate your thyroid or your throat and actually read out, you know, the air and these vibrations very, very precisely, you can already see that with that someone who's got special equipment might be able to pick that up, you know, might be able to reconstruct it. And if we're now talking military type technology, classified technology that's maybe 15, 20 years ahead of what has been made public, and someone says, you know, I think somebody is reading out my subvocal speech, then again, don't say, oh, this is crazy. Say, well, if you're not crazy, if otherwise you come across as perfectly normal, then let's not assume you have this kind of weird disease that keeps you normal in any other way, but just on this particular topic sends you crazy. That's very unlikely. Instead, rather think, hang on, can I imagine that this could be done? That there could be maybe that you might be tested upon against your will with military technology, because you know how big the military intelligence complex is. You know that they want human test subjects because these, you know, anything that's military is not against animals, it's against human beings.
What's I'm I can't say that I have a lot of experience with, you know, being on military bases and witnessing that kind of stuff. But I will say that when I was pretty young, my dad is an electrical engineer and he also has an international business degree. So a lot of his work would be going and basically coming up with solutions for capturing energy and being more efficient in big complexes. Like sometimes he would work at Lockheed. But one time he took me because I wanted to be a marine biologist. And this is the only kind of experience I have with seeing things that the public wouldn't believe. When my dad took me to a place called Harbor Branch Oceanographic Society, or basically what they are, they're the ones that have Alvin. If you've ever seen that really deep sea submersible, that's called Alvin. And I got to go on the ship and kind of see all that stuff. But one of the things that they took me through was some of their labs, and then some outside there was these long stretches of like I'm going to have a hard time giving proper proportions because I was such a little kid that things would look bigger, I'm assuming, to me. But what I remember is like these 50-foot ponds, and they were in like rows, and they were covered by tarps, or kind of like not tarps, but like mesh. And they were maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet wide. And when you would walk past them, these giant shrimp that were probably, I'm not even joking, a foot long would flip out of the water, and it would scare the shit out of you. And they would like, and just flip and just do like a like somersault out of the water and flick water at you. And it was the craziest shit I've ever seen. And I mean, just they showed me that, and I can only guess the other kind of shit that I didn't get to see, or what's going on in like I I started to say I made friends with some people that have clearances. They didn't tell me anything. I'm not going to ask them to tell me things, but the things that they did talk to me about were pretty crazy. Like I saw him, he showed me a picture of busting a child smuggling operation in the Middle East, and that was a very sad photo, but it's also a very good photo, you know, because these kids are just like young boys, maybe I don't know, 10 years old, 5 years old, and just out in the middle of the desert. I didn't want to ask him too much about it, but there's shit out there that, you know, they say, oh well, it would take so many people to keep this secret. Do you know how, like, once you get into that shit, you think being in a regular gang, you know, these Crips and Bloods, that, you know, you can't leave the mafia, you can't leave these gangs and shit. Imagine having an unlimited budget that can go and really just make you disappear and come up with elaborate stories. Look at how easy it is to convince everybody around you to go and shut down the entire planet for something that it's nuts. So I won't go on too much of a rant. I'll let her continue speaking.
So, you know, you would have to test it. Your enemies will be human beings. You know, maybe robots one day, but today it's human beings. So they will test it on human beings. So they would then, you know, try it out on unsuspecting people. So when unsuspecting people come forward and say these things like, oh, subvocal speech is being read out, my brain print, my thoughts are being read out, my emotions are being read out, or even influenced, think military tech. Don't think crazy straight away, because then you underestimate just how big the military intelligence complex is. It's massive. It's like, you know, mind-blowing fractions of GDP, you know, and in actual real terms, how many thousand people work on that, what, like, you know, gazillions of different gizmos being developed and having to be tested and stuff like that. So do not underestimate that, you know, because this is now a proliferating industry that sometimes is just manned by ruthless people who just love war. You know, that's why they work in military tech and not making baby toys, you know. So the people manufacturing baby toys and people manufacturing like weapons for war will be different sort of people, you know. And those who make military kits might, you know, also just grab innocent people who are helpless and just, you know, shoot at them and see what happens, and then just discard them and throw them away. Do you see? So when these things happen, so remote neural monitoring sounds like, in most cases, what I've seen, exactly like this technology that, you know, is still classified, but there's enough reason to believe that this is actually exists. For example, because there's a leaked document. There's a leaked document which I shall also post later on, which says exactly this is what it is. You know, we had the Human Brain Project being announced by Barack Obama, the really big project to decode the brain. So now when innocent people come forward and say, I think my brain has been decoded, then you think, oh, you must be mad. No, did you just hear about this multi-billion, you know, dollars, pounds project that's just been announced? Sounds like what she's saying to you, no? Or he sounds just like it, you know. So when a multi-billion project to read out brain prints is being announced, then you probably expect, given the ruthlessness of certain men, and no doubt also women, inside the military intelligence complex, that they would just grab innocent people, test on them, and then throw them away.
I will tell you the one experience and what kind of interested me in this a little bit more is my own family, my aunt. So my aunt used to work at the Farm Bureau in Homestead, Florida. And so when she was working there, let me back up. So my aunt kind of lost her mind a little bit around when I was 12, 13 years old. And I used to get really frustrated when I'd be in the car with her because she was so anxious and panicked. And I've since then gained a lot of sympathy for what she went through, because in the last year, my mom just happened to drop the fact that, oh, she, when she worked at the Farm Bureau, one of the hijackers came into her work and asked her for places for flight instructions. And then on top of that, during that, she started getting harassed. She was saying she was getting followed. She was having all sorts of creepy things happen to her. And then on top of that, she started having problems and breakdowns. Sorry, I kind of spaced. One of the people at her work was really all of a sudden trying to get her fired, a Cuban woman. And what's interesting, I started to think about it, was I've always had really good interactions with Cubans. I always liked Cubans when I was younger. But then remember who kind of the Cubans were working with our government to overthrow or basically get rid of Kennedy. So I'll tell you something creepy. I've stated this before. I spent a year and a half training my body to go into Air Force Spec Ops. I had gone through a lot of rigmarole to go and join, and I had a very, very high score on my intake for the ASVAB. I had a nearly perfect score, and that's the only thing that kind of helped me get in, because when you go to your recruiter, you have to disclose if you've ever been arrested for a felony. So I've been arrested for a felony, but it was completely dismissed and removed. And once the video evidence that I displayed of me being harassed basically exonerated me from any problems, but still I did have an arrest, but it was completely expunged. So why I say that is it made it very difficult, even though I had such a good high standing as far as physicality. I have a strong background in swimming. I was a competitive swimmer for 12 years, which basically breaks everybody when they go into spec ops. That's the part that they fail most of the time. So I was very physically fit. I've been training my body for a year and a half specifically for MEPS and the requirements. So they finally approved me after I get such a high score. The day literally after they approved me for MEPS, which is your intake, and you finally actually get to join the military, and you start getting, you go in and do all your requirements. A Marine, a retired Marine, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm on my way to go pick up some fencing because I'm going to be gone for who knows how long, and I wanted to make a big pasture for my mom, for our dogs. So I'm driving down the road in the middle of nowhere. It's a 2-lane road, and the only thing on next to me is farmland, perfectly bright. And this guy in a Kia just starts coming straight at me. He just leaves his lane and then starts coming straight at me at 1 in the afternoon. No reason for it. And I'm like, well, surely he's going to correct. Maybe he just kind of drifted. No, he goes straight at me, and I barely make it so that he doesn't collide straight with me. He hits the kind of the rear quarter behind me of the vehicle. I flip the car 3 times into a ditch. I luckily crawl out of the sunroof, And then I'm sitting on the side of the road, and a woman comes out, and I'm, obviously pretty upset about what just happened. I was like, what the fuck was that? Why did you do that? Like, what the fuck? And she goes, oh, you hit us. And I can't say, that there was actual purpose and malice behind it, but it's very odd that someone would just hit me in the middle of the day, send their passenger over, and then tell me that it was my fault. And fortunately, the Highway Patrol was able to go and correct that. Then, that's not the end of it. So, years later, after I started working at Lowe's, and I make friends with a guy who I became roommates with, who is actually interning to be an officer in intelligence. And it never really occurred to me, anything like that. But then later on, when I'm working, he gets me another job, and I'm driving back from a delivery, and this guy, I'm monitored in that delivery truck where I'm being watched from inside my cab, everything in front of me. Also, like my speed, I can't accelerate too fast. And so I'm in the right lane, in the slow lane, and I'm trying to go around this person that's going slow. For whatever reason, this guy is next to me, and he's just kind of like being a dick and just purposely not letting me pass. Eventually, I'm able to go around this person, and then this guy that wouldn't let me pass just loses his fucking shit. He gets really close on my tail, starts honking. I'll actually play the video because it made the news. And then he starts making a gun sign in my mirror. So the whole time I'm like, all right, well, he just did that. I have no idea what he's going to do. So I go and I keep a car next to me, and I just try to keep someone next to me so he can't get like around me or whatever, because he's acting erratic, and I have no protection. That day I was actually supposed to take my wife with me because she was getting a job, and had she been with me, I would have been carrying my firearm. So eventually, I can't really break the law, and he gets up next to me and then smashes his car into my truck, and then goes and does it again. And then he tries to escape, but he gets caught at a light and there's too much traffic. So I'm stopped in a turning lane. He stops in front of me a couple car lengths down. He gets out, and I lock the door. And as he's trying to pull open the door, I, in one movement, unlock it and throw the door into him. And then I beat the shit out of him, and then basically put him into a guillotine and hold him for several minutes before the sheriffs come. So that was pretty fucking wild. And then last year, I had a guy lose his fucking mind on me out of nowhere, and he was I drive a Jaguar F-Type, so it's kind of a small like sports coupe. It's not super small, maybe about the size of like a Mustang or whatever. And so he tries to run me off the road on my way to work, and he's in a big red F-150, and he's fucking like going crazy. I get a snap a picture of him, and then luckily I had my dash cam on, and I was able to kind of get a blurry image of his license plate. So I was going to report it to the cops, and I went to go and confirm what his license plate was, and I looked it up because you can kind of look up people's license plates in a certain fashion if you need to look up their like priors. So I find out that he's done this twice to people, where he actually ran them off the road and hit them because both of his accidents are the exact same thing. Then I go and I just put his name into Google, and I find out this guy is guilty. He's a sex offender, and he had gone and tried and attempted, he made the news for this, attempted to abduct several little girls off of schools. And it's just because I know that the government likes to use these fucking sociopaths for harassment and doing nefarious shit. I don't know. I really don't know, but sometimes that kind of keeps me up, and it really makes me more sympathetic to some of this targeted individual shit. So that's my little spiel on that. Is schizophrenia real, or is it spiritual warfare? Or, Jared keeps telling me, I'm bad, Jared. I'm sorry. I haven't been going and reading that one guy you keep telling me, that Raven from Nephilim Death Squad always names Marzinski. Was it Jeffrey Marzinski? Shut the fuck up, Constantine. I'm not, what's his name? I'm not about to take off my shirt. Yeah, that's, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, Jerry Marzinski. Okay, so he's talking about demons. And the more, the more that I think about this kind of stuff, like, I was an atheist for the longest time. And what really, like, brought me to Christianity was just seeing certain patterns and kind of just, like, really the demonic shit that, I'm not Bert Kreischer. It is crazy when there's no explanation for some of the stuff that you see is just beyond evil. And, like, I'm obviously really into conspiracy shit, and I would go to church, and somehow these people that are such avid Christians, they're so dedicated to learning the Bible, and they're all so like intent on believing that there's a great devil or evil spirits, but they never really want to accept, like, when I would talk about things like the Finders group, or like, how do you, that thing that it manifests in real life, it's just not like a ethereal thing that projects into people. It has to exist in the real, like, physical world somehow. So I don't know how this cabal of evil people really relates, if they actually are conscious of, demonic entities. I'm kind of skeptical of, like, the whole Hillary Clinton thing where they're doing the spirit cooking and all that shit. But there is kind of a thing where, like, you manifest stuff and you play around with things, even if you're joking. I'm very cautious a lot of times when I notice something and I'm like, all right, I need to chill out because I'm bringing about bad vibes. I'll tell you, like, for instance, Constantine, you were joking about, like, Ben Avery's show. The reason I don't really watch it anymore is because I have, my wife is younger, and so this 40-year-old mod on Ben's show would basically call me a groomer because my wife is younger than me. And then I found out she was projecting because she was talking about it. Like, I found screenshots of her talking about how, like, she was okay with David Bowie banging 13-year-olds because, according to her, 13-year-olds back then were mature, or she was pen pals with a guy that was in jail or prison for molesting children, and she was bragging about how he was a famous person. And then the other thing is, because she's so evil, it's very funny. She's actually in my banner. And that kind of goes towards the SSRI, like, evils. But it's very funny that in one of my last interactions with her, because she's a 40-year-old spinster and she doesn't have kids, I kind of started trolling her about, around Christmas, she was saying shitty things to me. And I asked her, how was your Christmas? Did you get to open presents with your children? Obviously, she doesn't have a husband and children because she's a horrible individual. And I said, I got to open presents with my youngest. It was her first real Christmas. I was so happy. And then she said, die in a fire, faggot. Die in a house fire, faggot. And when you say something that evil and you manifest it, guess what happened? She lives in L.A. And a week later, literally all of L.A. burned down and she had to flee like a rat from her home. So when you start saying shit like that, I start believing that there is a real true God and you can't just go doing that things. You're going to manifest evil onto yourself. And that's kind of my little rant about that. So let me give this woman her last minute and then we'll watch the committee of about targeted individuals.
So you see, so this is how to understand remote neural monitoring. What it is essentially people being grabbed, randomly, and then their electromagnetic signals are being read out and then fed back to them, and all sorts of things are being done to them. And what is being done to them in detail, they can tell you. So listen to their testimony carefully, and depending on how much you know about technology, you can reverse engineer what has been done to them. But basically this is what you would expect. It's electromagnetic signals. With that you can move muscles because this is all done with electromagnetic signals. And neural activity inside your head again is generating electromagnetic signals. So with these advances in processing power and the sensitivity of our electromagnetic sensors that measure fields, you can now, I'm telling you, read out people's brain activity. And to what sort of sensitivity just depends on how much money you have and how advanced your kit is. There you go.
Poor Tim Dillon. We wish him well. All right, well, let's watch the Indigo Ribbon Campaign. So the Indigo Ribbon Campaign, I was trying to figure out what this was. Raises awareness against crimes against targeted individuals, and they have Indigo Ribbon Day falling on November 23rd of each year. So let's go ahead and see what these people have to say. Oh, you want? Okay, yeah, it's a short clip. Let's watch that other thing that Slav had suggested real quick, since it's only 2 minutes.
Hear this. It's going. I haven't turned it on yet. When I do, it's going to blast out a 65 kilohertz beam. Because the wavelength is so small, it doesn't spread. Because 65 kilohertz has a wavelength like that. So it's going to be, in that sense, similar to a laser. It just comes right out as a beam. Now, how do we make that audible? Well, they put a modulation on top of the 65 kilohertz. There's a modulation. And now, here's the next thing I have to tell you. That 65 kilohertz is very high amplitude. It won't hurt you, we don't think. Okay? You certainly can't hear it, and we don't think it'll hurt you. And it's very high amplitude. And what happens when you have two sound waves like this, sound plus sound can create sound, but only at high amplitudes. At low amplitudes, sound waves just travel right through each other. You may be sort of familiar with this. But at high amplitudes, you can create sound. So what happens in this apparatus is the audio sound, the sound that you're going to hear, is actually created in the beam, not here. And because it's created in the beam, and if it stays in the beam, we have a beam of sound. So let me demonstrate this for you. Let me turn it on. And I'm going to find the piece of music that we like.
Yeah.
You may not like it.
The Eagles? You like the Eagles? Okay, good. Oh, we have a friendly audience this year.
Yeah. I think they're just saying it to make us feel better.
Right. All right.
It's worth the $2,000. It's not our money. Now, the sound that you're hearing is being created in this beam. It almost sounds like it's coming from your head. So let me try to scan the whole audience here so everybody gets to hear this. Absolutely remarkable. Pete, are you getting it? Let's try to, wait, one more thing. Let's try to bounce it off the wall. Raise your hand if you can very clearly hear it. I'm going to try to bounce it off the wall. Look at where the hands are raised. It's
Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, sorry. I muted myself so I could cough. I didn't say anything too important, I don't think. My bad. Let me know if this is too loud for you guys. If anyone's a little late to this, it's actually been pretty interesting what we've been talking about. And I did go and explain several times kind of what was going on with that last video in my own terms of understanding electricity and signals. So at the very beginning, if you need kind of a breakdown of how that works and you didn't understand what she was talking about, re-listen to it later on from the beginning, and I explained how signals work.
To maximize the time for anybody in the audience to make a comment, raise a question, we're going to not break and move right into public comments. And so there is a roving microphone. Somebody who has the mic? Can I see who has the microphone? Okay. Can you? So people don't have to crawl over each other. I can't hear you. Yeah. And if you would keep your comments brief, I would be very appreciative, because if you don't, I'm afraid I have to make time for others. So
he's going to keep the timer. What did you say? Oh, you mean to move it up?
Okay. Just give us one moment, please.
So are they setting a finite time for each?
Yeah, I think they are.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard.
What is it, 2 minutes? 1.5 minutes, okay. We've been keeping all of our speakers to time, too, and that's the apparatus.
Quite a line.
Pardon?
If I can clarify, we had a number of people who asked to speak, and we had a public sign-in at the front table as we communicated throughout the past few weeks with people who asked to speak. Consequently, to all of you wonderful people in line, I am sorry to say I'm going to go in order of this list. So everybody could actually just sit down, please, and I will call the list, and I will bring this to you, okay? Thank you so much.
Yeah. That's okay.
Times 20 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go.
Please, Val, start. And I ask each person after Val calls you and you come up, if you could just introduce yourself to us, we would be very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Wonderful. So the first person I have is Michael S. Perfect. Thank you so much.
My name is Michael Shaneyfeld. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. The question that I brought to the board is that in 2000 I was approached by an ex-Navy sub-diver, and he brought to my attention the use of an auditory weapon that he stole from the United States Navy. Yeah, he told me about this weapon that he stole from the Navy, and he told me how the weapon would affect the central nervous system of a human. And he wanted me to go out and assist him in certain things. And in 2006, my life changed. I woke up one night and I got a strong electrical shock in the center of my chest. From that, I started to have problems with my heart. I started having Jiminies, irregular rhythms. Went in and to the hospital. The doctors determined that I was getting electrical shock through my chest. Then I went in and had an operation done, ablation. And all this just keeps going on. From then, it went to my lungs. Then from there, it went to my kidneys. From there, it went to my bladder. From there, it went to my colon. And it keeps going on and on and on. Medically, I've been looked at and reviewed over and over and over again. My brother, he's a doctor. My sister, she's a nurse. My nephew's a nurse. And I've got people that have talked to me about medical situations and medical views. And I know exactly what's occurring is wrong, and I feel like I'm a test subject. And I've responded to the government, and the government responded back to me. But I have not seen no action. I've given y'all a report, and y'all can look at the letters that I've sent in.
Gerald Schatz. Thank you. My name is Gerald Schatz, and I'm a lawyer and retired assistant professor of ethics and law at Michigan State University. I want to address two things very quickly. One is the theme of vulnerability and its recognition. We have gone from an era of very reflective and I think very decent recognition of the moral obligations of researchers to an era of discussion of regulatory burden. I think that's unseemly. The second point is that there is law out there. The bioethics community has been oblivious to it, but there is international law. There is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the United States ratified in 1992, and it makes informed consent an absolute requirement, no exceptions, not even in emergencies, subject to those normal legal fictions of consenting for the incapacitated patient to medical care and so forth. Additionally, the Geneva Conventions and additional protocols to the Geneva Conventions make research very, very difficult or prohibited altogether for those individuals who are caught up in war and armed conflicts. Michigan State University faculty responded to the OHARP request for comment in 2005 on equivalent protections. I will be pleased to provide that comment and those citations and some additional materials to the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sina Ryan.
Thank you very much. My name is Sina Ryan. I am an Iranian American, been living here since 1976. To answer the question to the chair lady that if it's still going to happen or is still going on, I will assure you that it's still experimentation going on, and one of live standing right here. I strongly believe that I have been targeted for the experimentation of a brain research since September 2008. Without my consent, they are controlling my mind and using electronic remote control device to send instruction. In the past 2.5 years, I have been subjected to constant electric shock, a sleep disturbance, a sleep deprivation, short but severe localized pain in my into various parts of my body, telephone and bell rings in my ears, heat waves through my body, horrifying dreams, creating sudden fear and worries in my mind. They do.
So all of that is completely plausible. Controlling someone's muscles is completely possible through a signal targeted at somebody without having to be too specific, because it's such a large area and large mass that you're just basically contracting something. You're not making them say like specific words, or you're not trying to activate something very specific and get like a series of instructions for someone, like you were hypnotizing them. The other thing is he starts talking about like several people on this so far have stated that they were feeling burning sensations. Now, that would be very plausible if you're getting radiated with some kind of signal, because you're sending out like a microwave, and for it to be strong enough to interfere with somebody's body, it would have to be quite the strong signal. Otherwise, it would be subject to a lot of interference from just the radiation of just around you constantly.
These mostly when I am inside my apartment, but sometimes all this happens, some of this happens when I'm outside without seeing anybody or any device. This experimentation are done to me without any touch or anything, see anybody. This inhuman and painful method of torture include reading my thought and memories. Through this, they have been able to control me and subject me to severe pain that I have been suffering for the past 29 months. My health has deteriorated during this time, and I have no medical insurance to seek medical help. My life is in danger, and I need your help from the government. I am only asking them to stop this painful torture and leave me alone so I can go back to my life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. John Hall.
My name is Dr. John Hall. I'm a medical doctor from Texas. As I understand the memorandum from the President, it's for you to determine if current legislation is adequate in protecting individuals and if there's any ongoing experimentation. In reviewing the common rule, it's very obvious that there's a lot of loopholes to informed consent. All of the horrific experiments you've mentioned, Willowbrook, MK Ultra, radiation experiments, mostly were done without informed consent. They were funded by the DoD and intelligence agencies, where I'm not even so sure you would know if there's an IRB, much less if an IRB is looking at informed consent. As a physician, relative to some of what you're hearing today, in the community, we are seeing an alarming rate of complaints of use of electromagnetic weapons, microwave auditory effects, silent sound spectrum, EEG cloning, which has taken the lab out of the laboratory and into the home. Most of these, from the research that we reviewed, can be done remotely. It seems to be more weapons research than medical research. I personally corresponded with upwards of 1,500 victims, all complaining of identical complaints from every state in the nation. Of being exposed to electromagnetic radiation, non-ionizing radiation for the use of cognitive control or behavior control. I've submitted a paper to you, and there's another paper submitted to each member from another physician in Kansas City, alluding to the same thing.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hall?
I would like to refer my time back to Dr. Hall. Can I?
Okay. Mr. No, it's okay. Mr. Millicent Black. Oh, madam.
My name is Millicent Black. I'm from Tennessee. Possibly transgenerational person whose family members have been used for at least 3 generations, and I'm the second one. My dad possibly was the first one who was admitted to a Nashville hospital with a pineal gland tumor, left there with a plate in the back of.
One thing, if you're not aware of it, look up the plutonium experiments. And the reason I thought about it was because there was a guy, a black guy, that was subjected to basically experiments using radiation and just basically exposing them to uranium just to see what it would do. And the wife of this guy, after he died, ended up suing and winning. But they used to just send guys in the military out to be exposed to radiation after they had dropped bombs on people. I don't think I'll get to it, but I do want to talk about at another point this guy that has a breakdown of the Fukushima incident, and I learned some things about radiation, at least as far as nuclear bombs, is that the polonium that he was saying was in the nuclear weapons is what that uranium do? The thing that's interesting that I didn't know and is the half-life on these radioactive materials is very, very short. It's like 90 days, I believe, is what he was stating for at least this polonium-210, I believe, is what he said. It's been so long since I've looked at a periodic table, especially with the updated elements on there and stuff that kind of just is kind of experimental and isn't really confirmed. So I don't really know all of that stuff anymore. But it is interesting to start thinking about when people say nuclear weapons are fake or whatever, or this threat of nuclear weapons, if we've been storing nuclear weapons that supposedly have a half-life that's completely depleted by the time that, this is 30 years old. He was stating that this thermal reactor is no good after 30 years. This is a little bit of a tangent, so I'll go back to it, but it's an interesting thing that I want to explore on the next stream. Sorry, let me go back to
of his head, not the front of his head, where his pineal gland would have been. At his death, I sought, well, actually before his death, I sought legal counsel for some horrendous treatment he had received at a nursing home that was also partnering with that hospital in Nashville, only to find out that a judge told the attorneys to drop that case. I am a part of the group that's here today representing those who are receiving the electromagnetic torture, and even my daughter at 5 months old was referred to that same Nashville hospital after having been refused treatment at the local hospital. I believe she is also a victim of the electromagnetic torture. Where does it stop? When are we given our rights as humans and as citizens? Does being African Americans qualify as non-black or non-white and non-American citizens or non-American people? We seem to have a double bind going.
Thank you.
Mr. Marshall? Or Mrs. Marshall?
Good afternoon. My name is Connie Marshall. I'm a former mayoral candidate from Louisville, Kentucky. I have never been involved in any criminal activity. I found a document in my bank account that said, problem with Kentucky government, check federal government paperwork and file before releasing information to anyone. I am an 8-year victim survivor of assaults by directed energy weapons. The torture I've experienced consists of body overheating, body extremely cold, seizures, heart pain, earaches, itching behind eyes, burning behind eyes, swelling, headaches, involuntary movement of my limbs, exhaustion, speeding and heart racing, hair coming out by the handfuls as if I've had chemotherapy, mind paralysis, being hypnotized or placed in a trance-type state, being tracked by a drone or satellite, controlled dreams, sleep deprivation, V2K, which is voice to skull, projected sound, extreme...
Oh, there you go, Slob. She's talking about the V2K. The other thing, too, is what's so nefarious about, for instance, SSRIs or the medical industry, and what's not fair for, like, let's say someone like me as a mechanic. You can completely isolate the cause and effect of, let's say you have a catastrophic incident where I was just working on your vehicle, and it's very easy to break down all the things that are in your records of what was done to the vehicle. I myself, as somebody who's very experienced, can tell you, why your tires look the certain way, that, why they have certain damage in a certain place, why something happened that you wouldn't foresee, and I would be able to connect the dots. In the medical industry, I don't know, because I only studied bio for such a short time, that I don't know, although speaking to people that are specialists in things, they're able to connect dots. But when you start targeting people with all these different medications and you don't know how they interact, or they say they don't know how they interact, it makes it very easy for them to have a scapegoat. The one thing I think about, though, sometimes is there was a program that back when I was like wanting to be a mycologist, you could run this program on your computer, and it was called threading, I believe. And what that did was basically in organic chemistry and biochem, you have all these myriad of different compounds that are formed, and fighting interactions. So what they were doing was having you use your computer and offer up your bandwidth, and basically kind of like back the way that like a cryptocurrency works is perform all these calculations and see how basically what I believe is stoichiometry of understanding the interactions between like the actual like just flat math between one chemical and like the ratios. I believe that's what they were doing. So I have a hard time at believing them when they say they don't know how drugs interact with each other, because basically it's almost scientists like in chemistry and labs are almost not really necessary anymore because everything's been calculated out. I don't really think, just from what I've kind of seen, is that they already know like how things interact with each other. Yeah, there is, I'm sure, research to be done, but most of this stuff is kind of money laundering. I've talked to a lot of people in the medical field, in the science field, and one of the things that was I became disillusioned with when I was in school for biology, is I was not impressed with the people that were teaching me, and I was not impressed by the people that were learning around me. And I didn't see how these people that had no creative bone in their body and didn't have really they were just able to memorize things, and that's how they got through school. And I just didn't understand why these people were going to be scientists and what their value was. And then I started to come up with the idea that, well, from talking to people that were in research, like had research grants, is that they were basically, and they would get told what to find with the data. So a lot of this is basically semantics about proving the end justifies the means, basically. And so they already have what they want you to prove. Now your job is to come up with a story as to why that happens. I don't believe real science is actually happening anymore.
Extreme muscle spasms and extreme muscle cramps, being made to fall down, blue circles around the pupils of my eyes, and I'm here and you can look at them if you like. Low frequency noises in my home, high frequency noises in my home, sexual stimulation. Numerous electrical appliances in my home are destroyed. 4 computers, 2 fax machines, 7 telephones, 4 CD players, VCR, DVD players, electrical igniter switch on my furnace, washer and dryer, air conditioner. Also my car radio, CD player, and engine were destroyed. I am watched in my home 24 hours a day and followed around everywhere I go, though I do not have a criminal history. When I ran for mayor of my town, I was also attacked at debates and forums. My website is www.justiceforallcitizens.com. Thank you. And I would like to leave these flyers with you all as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Alan Hornsblum.
The other thing, too, as I've mentioned numerous times in my other videos, is the amount of control for the longest time that they've been able to, for instance, if they really, like that guy that, what was his name? Was it Seth? That his car exploded and he went off a cliff and they found like amphetamines in him. Seth Rich, I think it was. Like, I could be mixing them up. But since the 90s, vehicles have had the ability to be controlled remotely, and you could be basically run off the road with all these vehicles that have like lane assist. That can be used if somebody was able to attach to your vehicle's computer and steer you out into traffic. You're braking is completely controlled through the ABS system, the tire pressure monitoring system, the wheel speed monitors, like all this stuff that I look at on very expensive cars that I work on. You would be surprised at the amount of little things that are controlled. And like it's starting to become more and more popular. Power steering, electric power steering, all of that can be calculated and controlled through the car. You can have your windows shut. The modules, for instance, that control the doors and the door locks, also can control the windows. You can have all sorts of little weird things happen. You could have your brakes not work. You could have your brakes activate. You could have things that are far out of your control that you wouldn't think of.
My name's Alan Hornblum.
Okay, Michael Hastings. Okay. I knew I always get him mixed up with someone else.
A Philadelphia-based author who has written books on things running the gamut from organized crime to Soviet espionage. But for the purposes of this meeting, I've written 2 books on the history of using prison inmates as test subjects. You may be familiar with one or both of them. I'm working with a couple colleagues now on the history of using institutionalized children as test.
Well, Slav, it is all hydraulic, I guess. But this thing is so with like your ABS brakes, that is hydraulic, but they have to be controlled by the ABS unit, and that's been in cars for the longest time, and that is concurrent with your wheel speed sensors and your tire pressure monitoring system. And there's other ways that they can control it as well. So
subjects for research, and I can assure you some of the material I'm finding is quite astounding, including the fact that Nobel Prize winners went to institutions for the feeble-minded to use them as test subjects. And in interviewing people over the years, not just test subjects, which I do on a regular basis, but also the doctors who initiated these experiments, these clinical trials. I'm talking about people like Konstantin Melektos and Albert Kligman and Hillary Kroprowski, Chester Southam, some of the top researchers of the 20th century. Most of them are famous.
And it doesn't really matter also, because even if you're saying, you know, okay, let's make everything, oh yeah, cruise controls easily. The thing also, so you might think, okay, well, I have a pretty an older car, but your radio is still tied into your ignition system. So if someone was to get really creative and send in signals from the radio into your, if they had a wiring that they could intercept on the wiring diagram, could easily shut off the car or cause certain signals to really just throw you out of control.
Some are infamous.
I work all the time with trying to find out like really high-end vehicles, understanding the wiring diagrams, and the things that are connected to stuff is very, very crazy.
It's remarkable that almost all of them articulate how little medical ethics was taught in medical schools at the time. And I had to bring up, I had to educate one of them, in fact, about the Nuremberg Code. When I mentioned it, he wasn't even familiar with it. These problems with regard to medical ethics are still there. I periodically give talks at universities and med schools, and it's stunning to me that when I go into a bookstore at the university and go in, maybe I'll see one of my books there. Of course, I'm a little bit disturbed when they don't, but I also don't see anything by Harriet Washington or by James Jones, Bad Blood, or by Jonathan Moreno's book. Medical ethics is an orphan in today's medical arena. It is out there in left field. They really de-emphasize it, and that's part of the continuing problem that doctors, as Dan said earlier when they do these studies, It's a cost-benefit analysis, and there's much more benefit to doing research, even when it breaks rules and laws and cuts corners, than by following the rules. And that's why I believe the Commission has to make a very strong condemnation of Dr. Cutler and the institutions and doctors that he worked with, not just with regard to Tuskegee and Guatemala, but there are so many other incidents and events out there. As Susan said, we will continue to discover these. There will be another commission like yours in 10 years going over what you didn't look at or what you didn't do. So I would encourage you to be as aggressive as possible, not just describe what happened, but really condemn those who broke the law, because there's doctors making decisions right now, and those decisions are going the wrong way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Deborah Paulson or Deborah Paulson?
On a slightly related note, because what this guy is talking about is with transparency. And I was just listening to, I can't remember what podcast, I want to say maybe it was Tucker, and he was talking about how, I believe it was Romania or Poland, was saying that they were being held hostage by the IMF because they were trying to have a law that would disclose actual spending in their own country, and the UN and the IMF basically said they will withdraw or withhold funding to their country if they expose and make a law that would make for transparency of their spending. And you know what they called it? They called it the Russia law.
Hi, I'm Deborah Paulson from Kenosha, Wisconsin. I'm going to refer to a paper from Professor McCoy at the University of Wisconsin on no-touch torture. He talks about a total assault on all senses and sensibilities, auditory, visual, tactile, temporal, temperature, and survival, refined through years of practice. Sensory disorientation relies on a mix of sensory overload and sensory deprivation via banal procedures, isolation, then intense interrogation, heat and cold, light and dark, noise and silence, for a systematic attack on all human stimuli. I've been a human subject for experimentation for almost 2 years, and I've contacted Dr. Hall. I stand with a very large group. Excuse me, I'm very nervous, but I'm very tired of having my rights taken away. And thank you for hearing me, and thank you for the others. I would like some help. Thank you.
Thank you.
No-touch torture sounds like a fetish.
Ms. Lisa Becker.
Sorry, pardon me. Thank you. My name is Lisa Becker. I am also from Wisconsin. I have been a non-consenting test subject in military medical research. I, too, believe my experience is referred to as no-touch torture, utilizing defense technologies. Jonathan Marino, he basically predicted all this a number of years ago in his book Undue Risk. I'm asking you to help initiate a congressional investigation. We've all come a long way. This is what is needed. We want to have the accounts of this extreme human rights abuse that's going on in our country documented and heard, all of the accounts. We also need what was done during the Clinton administration, which is a major declassification of some of these documents that are hiding what's been going on. I speak for many when I say we've suffered long enough. My personal experience has been 10 years. I've been vilified. I've been ostracized. I've been tortured. I have burns on my body. I'm an American. I have rights. The answer to the question, the big question today, could it happen today? The answer is yes, it is happening today. It is happening for some of us every day. I am begging for you to help us. Thank you.
And I'll notice and note that these people all seem like they all look like normal people. They look like functional people in society. Like they all seem like not what you would expect. Like when we were watching the other day, when we first got into this targeted individual thing about that, you know, this is a strong possibility. There, you know, a 5% of all these people could be experiencing it. It's well documented that MLK and Malcolm X were targeted and harassed. I'm sure there's plenty of other famous cases, but those are the ones that come to my mind. And it seems like it's very interesting that that woman from the last video had very high credentials.
Thank you.
Mr. James Walbert.
My name is James Walbert. To date, I have one of the strongest cases documented of these unethical violations against our society. Due to the facts of having the kinds of professionals that I have involved with this case, I have been able to prove that this crime against others and myself is real and shows reason to be concerned with. I am in hopes that I am able to prove the same thing to this committee. And by the introduction of the evidence that I have to introduce to the committee, I and the professionals that are standing with myself in this crime would like for this committee to consider the introduction of these documents with the growing concern of this crime to the President for his review. With these hopes in mind for this consideration, I would also like to ask of this committee to consider an investigation into these unethical violations of others and myself that are affected by this crime. With this consideration of this investigation request into these matters, I would also like to point out the abuses of children that have been documented by the many professionals that I am currently working with into these matters of this crime. To date, the professionals have been documenting these offenses against the children that are related to the many victims of these crimes. They have been, proven this concern to be valid, as I am pointing out to this committee, the growing concern of fellow states that have now passed laws against forced chipping of an RFID tracking chip. These states that have now passed such bills into law: Colorado House Bill 071082, North Dakota Senate Bill 2415, Oklahoma State Senate Bill 47, House Bill 072092, Missouri House Bill 550, Pennsylvania Bill, Georgia Senate Bill 235, and the list just goes on. I was also wanting to ask if I could provide a portfolio of introduction of 12 professionals, from political support to medical investigations, as well as private investigative support, to the committee as well for review.
May, thank you very much.
Thank you. Right on.
Mr. Peter Rosen.
Hi, I'm Peter Rosenholm. I'm from Rhode Island. Like all the others, we go through this every day. I'm at least 14 years now of being tortured. It's non-consensual human experimentation. It's remote, it's covert. It's hard to prove it a lot of times. Many of my attacks were microwave weapons. Medusa is one. In all the hospital statements when I was hospitalized, I told them.
Oh, you said something about Medusa? I'll have to go back.
Is one. In all the hospital statements when I was microwave. It's hard to prove it a lot of times. Many of my attacks were microwave weapons. Medusa is one.
Okay, I'll have to look up Medusa
when I was
and this Tony Chase guy.
I told of being hit by radiation weapons, that I could hear voices. Medusa now admits to all those capabilities. I'm also in the Naval War College's Congressional District, and I've got falsely diagnosed, drugged. I pretty much proven all that wrong. I'm off all the medication, but I'm still tortured. It goes on every day, and it goes on every day for all these people. What I would like is for us to have a participation on your committee, for someone from our group to actually participate. I'm wondering if that's possible. Because we're the victims. We're like the Guatemalans who are tortured. Is there a chance that that can happen? Did you hear me?
You're
Is there a chance that a group or an individual from us can be on the committee?
we're constituted by the president as a commission and we have public comment, and you can write us and we will read everything you give.
Oh, okay. Is Tony Chase that guy that like they were trolling him and shit? I think I just saw like about him on some other show, and I just did look up that Medusa weapon is the microwave weapon.
Give us.
Right.
It's the President Obama appoints the commission.
The other thing we deal with is like a COINTELPRO attack. Law enforcement attacks us, discredits us, will put us in a mental hospital if we try too hard. These people all don't want to go to doctors. The Patriot Act has provisions where doctors have to follow what they say. So a lot of these people aren't getting their teeth fixed, aren't going for medical care. We're in a bad situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kenneth Rhodes, or Rons? Mr. Kenneth Rhodes. Ms. Letitia Peters.
Madam Chair, members of the Bioethics Committee.
Yes,
members
thank
of the
you.
Bioethics Committee. My name is Letitia Peters. I'm from Trenton, New Jersey. I was a federal government employee working 16 years as an electronics engineer right here in Washington, D.C., where I got sick due to toxic mold exposure. And when I started complaining about it and using my rights, I believe now, after 5 years of being out of the government, after 16 years of service, that I was put into this 24/7 execution chamber. And I, too, am looking for congressional investigations. I should be covered under the Whistle Protection Blowers Act. And I, too, would like to submit documentation, which I presented. And I have been denied medical treatment. I have been disregarded as being non-human. All my rights have been violated. My parents and I are living together now in Trenton, New Jersey, and there are low-flying aircrafts dropping biological weapons over our houses every day in order to try to kill me.
Now, this lady may be a little bit off, but I will say there's another thing that people, when I used to hear this shit about, what was it? The thing behind the jets. What is that called? The trails, the chemtrails. So the interesting thing about that is there's an operation that the military did called Operation LAC, Large Area Coverage, when they did and admitted to dropping chemicals to see their effect on people, I believe in rural Alabama. They probably did it in more places, but it does show like they do actually do these things, and they will gaslight you from flooding the market of ideas with all sorts of craziness, and they do a good job and displaying, it just takes one nutcase to throw out, basically have everybody throw the baby out with the bathwater.
And I just want to demonstrate some of the evidence that I have and provide to you, because I've been trying to get to the president, but I know all of my information has been rerouted. So I, too, am requesting a congressional investigation as well. And may I present this information to you?
May. Thank you very much.
Ms. Tammy Battaglia.
Hi, my name's Tammy Battaglia. I've been enrolled in psychological experiments on the record since the age of 13 without my consent. I've spent many years recovering from experimental hypnosis, physical and biological testing that I've undergone during decades of tests conducted by government-funded doctors, corporate think tanks, and researchers. I've experienced tremendous loss and trauma over the years of subjection to non-consensual experimentation, which has been devastating to my life. The people conducting experiments on other human beings do not consider the horribly destructive ramifications that they're subjecting victims to. As a result, there is no rehabilitation after experiments. No consideration is given to the often severe psychological and physical trauma suffered by non-consensual test subjects almost continuously. Many victims, such as myself, are diagnosed with non-existent mental illnesses, and as a result, we are expected to take dangerous medications that we do not need. There's no way to seek justice for what we've endured because in America, the land of the free, justice is not free. The experiments violate every right imaginable and offer no restitution whatsoever. If myself or any other victim approaches law enforcement or government agencies, we're spurned and in some cases forcibly taken to mental institutions. I've not consented to be experimented on by any branch of the government, military, or members of the American Medical Association. The initial experiments unfolded from decisions that were made for me when I was a child, at a time when I was unable to understand what I was being volunteered.
This reminds me also of the MK Ultra Operation Artichoke, and what's the one that named Monarch? Those girls that were testifying, and there's a famous picture, I have it somewhere, of a little girl that was part of the experiments that did testify. So it's very interesting. They do go and they do this shit on little kids.
Volunteered for, or what the consequences would be. I deserve to be vindicated and released from these experiments immediately.
And also, come to think of it, most of the times that I've heard of the experiments done on these children, it seems that I remember them all really being like women. I don't know what the causality is between that.
As do all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rose Gopinski.
Amy, I love your question of us to try to figure out what the big problem is, to really analyze and get to the root of it. And I thought at first it was containment, which leads to things like false flags to confuse people. It leads to harassing people to discredit them, disable them, the TIs, that is, the victims. It leads to possible corruption, the secrecy, possible fear of going to prison on the people that are, on the part of the people that are executing these things. And then I realized underneath the containment, the secrecy dash containment umbrella, is a really glaring inability of the U.S. to ever apologize for anything. To be able to just say, I'm sorry. The rest of the world is waiting for us to say, I'm sorry, or I admit to something, I have flaws. Everyone does. And when it, contrary to the Pentagon myth that you should not do that to be strong, contrary to that myth, it makes a person stronger. Therefore, it will also make a country stronger. Other countries would very much appreciate it. Say, I'm sorry, 2 seconds of silence, and then we can go on with life.
Thank you.
Mr. Jeremy Radlar.
My name is Jeremy Radlow. I'm here to tell you that non-consensual human experimentation is happening in the United States today. I've been the subject of this experimentation for more than 5 years. Calling these activities experimentation is truthful but possibly distracting. I think the criteria governing the selection of experimentees will prove to be a much bigger scandal than the experimentation itself. The psychological torture protocol that's part of the so-called experimentation includes, but is not limited to, the use of non-lethal weapons and mind-invasive technology. Sleep deprivation, pain center stimulation, and worse are used against subjects. While some experimentees have found foreign objects in their bodies suggesting implantation, most have not. Receiverless mind-invasive technology has been demonstrated under laboratory conditions, but the most likely explanation is that experimentees are implanted with foreign objects either too small to appear on commercially available scanning equipment or designed to be indistinguishable from the surrounding tissue. These activities are highly deceptive, used clandestinely.
So the other thing, too, is what he was saying just now about picking up stuff on the scanners, like at airport facilities. There was a time that, not to, let's say, someone very similar to me was possibly moving things through the airport on them, and they needed to know what would show up on airport scanners and how it would show up. And so there are little diagrams of the different, just like we were looking at with the guy scanning for Wi-Fi. There is exactly the same thing that goes on with the scanners at the airport, where they will, you just have to mask it as the same color of something. And so if you're ever going through the airport and you see those dogs, those are only to scan for or smell for like explosives. To be able to train a dog to sniff for multiple things is quite expensive and not worth their time. So all you got to do is basically be confident and conceal things so that they look at the same exact color as something that's safe. And that's how you can get things through airport scanners. And there's plenty of little documentation of what little like infrared colors get displayed.
Technology and have the fingerprints of the CIA all over them. It's unreasonable to expect isolated individuals receiving this treatment to furnish proof. A thorough investigation is warranted. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Catherine Nestor.
My name is Catherine Nestor, and I'm from Pennsylvania. This commission has spoken of a long history of abuse of the human research subject. Although no one mentioned MKUltra today, President Clinton recently apologized for this. My young child and I have been used as non-consensual test subjects. We have been subjected to COINTELPRO-like stalking, remote neural monitoring, and electromagnetic torture, resulting in psychological and physical damage. And I won't go into the details of that because I have 4 pages written in here that is very similar to Connie's testimony. Please do not wait 70 years to investigate this. I ask Dr. Amy Gutman to begin today. There is new work for the Commission for Human Subject Protection on our shores. And please give us a dramatic response, Susan, and please give us a congressional hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Miriam Snyder.
Hello, my name is Miriam Snyder. I'm an educator, minister, human rights advocate. I work with many people that have suffered the ramifications of unregulated, deadly human research experimentation. Since I've brought this to the public, I've become a victim too. In fact, in the past I was. I have 3 questions I would like the Commission to answer, and then I'd like to submit some recommendations so that we do not have to go through this type of forum of listening, and then we have to rush this serious assassination program. Human research experimentation is being used to assassinate innocent people, and I think it's time that it takes much more than 2 minutes to rush up. I resent it. I spent my time, I listened, and I asked that you listen. Foremost, since Guatemala and Tuskegee experiments, it is understood that human research experimentation via particularly injections on innocent people is understood that these things are going on. I would like the commission to address what is being done to stop the continuance of non-verifiable injections being used on people. I'd like to know the commission to address what penalties and protections are in place for researchers, the incarceration of researchers.
Now, while she is quite a little bit of a character, I will say that she did say something about the injections, and it was about this time in 2012 that woman that got, I believe that was about the time that Bill Gates did file the patent, I believe, for that specific coronavirus, so that he could monetize the vaccine for it. And it was about that time that I believe, if we're connecting some far-fetched dots, there was a Chinese, Chinese scientist that ended up disappearing around that time as well, that started trying to expose this kind of stuff. I might have my dates. It might have been closer to 2014, 2015, but I mean, that's not too far off from those dates.
Who create deadly weapons and viruses. What is going to be done to stop the deadly created man-made viruses getting out the...
That's kind of odd that I just went on that little tangent and then she immediately starts talking about viruses that are created. It's like when I was just explaining earlier, like the beginning of this video, how exactly you would operate mind control through signals transferred over the air. And then that lady was like, yeah, that's exactly. Are you guys just fucking with me? Am I a targeted individual now?
Laboratory to human bodies. And when are we going to start incarcerating researchers? All right. Number 3, who supervises energy technology? Specifically, electronic torture. That is a major issue. Just hold on. I waited 2 days. Electronic torture. All of these people are here talking about they are being tortured. They are in a slow kill program via radiation. The cleft lip babies are coming out through radiation programs. The studies show it. I've submitted documentation. We have cleft lip babies because of unregulated radiation studies. What is going to be done to stop this? These people are suffering because of unregulated radiation studies, human research experiments, and the funding is immense, and people are dying. What's going to be done to stop it? Okay. With respect to neuroimaging, I found a tremendous amount of research regarding injection-induced seizures. Why is human research allowing experiments that allow injection-induced seizures?
That's kind of interesting. I happen to remember a certain other injection that was causing people to procure seizures. Now, while Miss Medea might be quite the character, she is spitting facts.
And through electronic technology. Now, what my recommendation? I would hope that this committee could launch a specific committee to address these issues with human rights experts, genocide specialists, people who have studied mass murders, that it's understood that these things do happen, okay, through genocide, and I can give you a list of people that have documentaries on this, and to investigate the citizen complaints regarding mind control weapons, in particular energy technology via satellite, induced seizure via satellite, microwave auditory effect weapon, all government-sponsored psychological operations, microchipping through injections. Above all, we seek the creation of a means for injections to be verified before entering the human body, and prosecution for anyone using these deadly tactics to harm the people. And we seek compensation for all the victims who have filed affidavits after affidavit documenting the atrocities involved with unregulated and deadly human research experimentation that they have suffered as a direct result of these criminal human research and the people, the whistleblowers who have exposed this. Thank you very much. And please have a forum where we don't have to do this rush up. I waited 2 days, and I don't like being rushed like this. I really don't.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Nigel Nicholson.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nigel Nicholson, and I have been in a psychological coercive mind control program. This started in 2002, where I was falsely arrested, I was drugged, and I believe I was hypnotized. Soon after that, I was being harassed by the police department, along with noise campaign that was being committed by the New York City Fire Department. I mean, for a whole year, every time I left my house, I was bombarded with noise, which led me to have a psychological breakdown. I've been job mobbed. I've been put into what I call a assassination type program. Okay, I've been villainized. My friends has totally retreated from me, even though I've continuously reached out to them. Okay, I have been under what I believe is neuro monitoring. When I can think of something and go outside and somebody will walk by me and repeat what I just said, I know I'm not crazy. Okay, regardless of what is being said, they make the victims of these programs to be diagnosed with a psychological.
Honestly, this guy is the most wacky, but something in me also is like, they've fucked with this guy so much that he's probably the most believable one.
Psychological illness to hide these crimes, because we all know that to discredit an individual, if you give them a mental illness or diagnose them with a mental illness, no one is going to believe us. No one is going to believe you or I. And this is how they are hiding these crimes.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Micheline Jones. Micheline.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Micheline Jones. I'm right here from D.C. I live in public housing, and I mention that because this is where most of the poor people are at, especially these days with the way the economy is going. I am the subject of MK Ultra, mind control. I am also the subject of electromagnetic radiation, and I have many videos to prove it. I've taken these videos to newspapers and to various places, even including, CDC, and everyone has just turned away as if this is hush-hush. I've had lawyers deny me assistance because they said, this is too big. So in research, I found out that the former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney asked for a reinvestigation under her resolution HR 1026 to reinvestigate COINTEL activities. I am constantly stalked. There's many covert activities that have followed me. Sleep deprivation, I don't have that too much now because I force myself. Clocks, radios, too much liquids at nights, whatever, just to get up and get out the house. I've asked public housing from the executive director all the way down to fair hearing, which is still pending right now, to get me out of this place. But now I'm beginning to wonder, would it do any good? I've relocated 3 or 4 times, and I had a deputy officer or county officer tell me this will follow you. So when they pick their subjects, this goes with you. I would like all of this medical abuse to be investigated, and if possible for you to get back with us. I didn't know about this meeting until yesterday, and I do appreciate your letting me have this time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Mr. Timothy White.
I'd like to thank the Commission for allowing the public to address these issues. And it's been a lot of information, and it's been very good and enlightening. And I see I'm in the right place to provide the information I have. And yes, the Tuskegee experiments are still going on, and the Guatemala experiments are still going on. But they're going on because of the advances in the signals technology and in cognitive neurological technology and neurophysiological experimentation and research. And the advances in that technology is allowing these things to happen and creating a new class of vulnerabilities for citizens who cannot protect themselves against this. Okay, we provide citizens who are currently non-consensual victims of cognitive neuroscience and neurophysiological research and experimentation, which is enabled remotely through extreme low frequency computer-to-brain entrainment technology. This technology exists and can be verified on subjects with a high degree of accuracy using current neural imaging technologies. Okay, this is an atrocity that has gone on for years. And like the Tuskegee experiments, it's clearly within the scope of this commission. Okay, the validity of this, if there's any doubt as to the validity of these claims, that this commission can conduct its own independent investigation by using functional brain imaging techniques. Okay, we ask that the committee, just because of the existence of our organization, Freedom for Covert Harassment and Surveillance alone, we have thousands of people who have contacted us claiming to be victims of this. The justification for our existence is justification that you should investigate this occurrence further. Okay, we need tests to determine if a citizen has been harmed by a cognitive weapon. These are cognitive weapons that somehow these people are being experimented on with. And just overall, we need to ban the unethical use of science and technology on all citizens for any form, for any reason, and in any form. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a minute. We have about 5 minutes left. So,
okay. Well, I'll take 5 minutes.
No, but if there's somebody else, okay. Thank you.
I'll try.
Absolutely. Thank you.
As you see, we have actually this is a minority of us. Approximately, let's say, I've spoken to probably 3,000 people. He's on probably 1,500. He's on 5,000. There's a lot of us across the U.S. And there's certain statistics, I think, that if you find that there is something going on wrong, that you're going on wrong, that somewhere along the line somebody has to do an investigation. There's a certain percentage of illness. You do an investigation. If there's a certain amount of cancers in an area, same as Brockovich went and did the investigation, she found a certain amount. Well, we're presenting our case right now. You said you guys wanted to be in the know. We're giving you the information now so that you are in the know. There is something going on. It's electromagnetically issue, and it has to do with from cell phones all the way to directed energy. And I think yesterday some of the colleagues went ahead and said that we didn't really talk about whether there's energy weapons or not, but I mean, we have thousands and thousands of documentations about energy weapons themselves.
And all we're asking for is an investigation on this. People are being harmed, people are being tortured, and people are being killed. And I think it's a pretty important thing for a bioethic committee to look into. And all we ask today is to please do that. And Mark, on March 1st, 2011, we came to you and we told you. And I don't know how many more people. My friends are dead, tortured to death by electronic weapons. And I don't know how many more people will die. And I hope I will be here again if you have this next year.
Thank you very much.
That's the end of the list.
Are we?
That's the end of the list.
Okay. Good. 1 minute. Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to do the best that I can while being hurt by a national defense weapon that our country built. I love our country, but I am in contact and have been with the chief of the Department of Defense Fraud, Waste, and Abuse hotline. He's worked with me and my wife for 2 years, and he went to the Pentagon after we were air assaulted by a jet at 150 to 200 miles an hour, that being me and my wife. That's why my face is rebuilt, and she's at home taking care of 100 head of cattle with a brain tumor. I've had 3 removed. I guess my point would be this, is that I stood up to this program, and that would be the Joint Operations System that our country built with the non-lethal and less than lethal weapons system. And I'm the only one known in the world, besides the people that helped build this system, to have this actual pulse on camera and have caught it. And I would like to submit that disc, but I guess the one question I would have, it's okay, Eli, you don't have to beat me up for the microphone. The one question I would have is, first of all, I would like to submit this to you as promptly as possible, and then ask each and every one of you that 90% of the people that approached you spoke the same way I am, scared, but also spoke. They're speaking of directed energy weapons. That was phased out with the non-lethal and less than lethal programs, and we all know that. Most of you do anyways. Would you please help save my life? Ma'am?
Hi, please submit what you have, and we will do what we can.
And your name?
My name?
Yes, ma'am.
Is Dr. Amy Goodman.
Dr. Amy Goodman? I'm going to submit that to you, and if I
Please.
die from this, then I'm quite sure somebody else will look at the evidence. Thank you for your time.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Okay, that was a lot more convincing than I expected, and thank you, Mr. Jared, for saying this is something we should go and investigate more. I appreciate that. This turned out to be very interesting. As I said, in the title, I said we were going to go over this guy speaking about the Fukushima problem, and then I also said I was going to listen to this plastic surgery breast implant illness story, because I found this page because she was another targeted individual apparently, and I don't think I'm going to get to that because it's a little late, but I appreciate everybody sticking around and watching it. If you would like the stream, appreciate that, and I'll try to find something else connected to this that you guys I hope will find interesting. Let's see. Oh, I'm back home. Let's the video. Let me find the Austin ladies. I'll look up. Let me Osentian ladies video. I'll just search that in YouTube so I remember it tomorrow. was that? Osentian Havana syndrome. Okay. Okay. I'll look at that tomorrow. I appreciate you guys coming in and watching again. It was a lot of fun hanging out with all of you. Let's see. I work tomorrow, but I don't work on Tuesday. So I should be able to stream longer again. And hopefully you guys will be here. And again, thank you for dropping by and watching. You guys have a good night and stay safe out there.